Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, Managing Partner at Northwestern Mutual. And today we have a very special guest in Katie Michael, Managing Partner of Orange Shoe Personal Fitness. Katie, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So before we have awesome stuff to dive in on the business end of things today, but I always ask the guests first to tell us a little bit about background, family, how you came to where you are today, and then we'll dive into all the fun stuff. Orange Shoe.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. So I grew up on the far east side, a small town called Deerfield, Wisconsin. Growing up, I had four sisters. I always kind of joke that I was really lucky that I got to share a bedroom with two. So there was three of us in one bedroom. So started out, my father was a residential builder for many, many years. So it was extra awesome. We would spend our weekends like shoveling apartment buildings or even like putting nail holes, whatever it was. Super lucky to be on the construction site. My mother was also in business with him. So seeing her help like manage and support was a really cool upbringing to have. Very, very grateful for it. We also got to do a lot of picking rock and baling hay because they were crop farmers at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we stayed really busy when we were kids. So then, after childhood, I fell in love with sports, absolutely just a huge passion. Went to college to be a Phi Ed teacher, loved coaching, loved teaching, made my way into business ownership. After teaching lots of yoga and Pilates, I decided that was definitely what I wanted to pursue as like a career. So long and the short was we went from the first employees of our company. Over time, my husband and I then bought out the holdings company. That was 4 years ago, and just been, kind of slowly growing. We have an amazing group of ownership in Orange Shoe. All the Orange Shoes are independently owned and operated. And to see young entrepreneurs grow and achieve is like one of the best things I've ever got to experience in my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we didn't get into that, but we're going to have Scott on the show next week. So I don't know how you guys chose that, but I definitely would have chose going second.
Yeah, actually, I was on vacation and I kept getting all these emails that I couldn't get to. And I'm like, oh, looks like I'm going first. And I actually did ask him, I'm like, how come I'm the one that's going first? He's like, I don't know.
Because he's going to correct everything that you say.
Right.
Except for the personal side. He can't correct you on that.
Yeah. So we go hunting together, my husband and I always walk 2 steps behind him so I can find whatever he didn't, which is just so much more fun.
Yeah.
So
hunting
I guess
what, bird?
We go hunting for lots of different things,
yeah.
But specifically mushroom hunting is coming up, and so we go mushroom hunting at the family farm. There's 300 acres, and so I'll walk 2 steps behind him and make sure I catch anything he doesn't.
I was thinking you walk 2 steps behind him, like, oh, if he misses, then I can.
Yeah, play cleanup. Yeah, that too. But he's a really good shot, so that would be the reverse.
Well, good. So you talked about your parents. Just extremely hard workers and business owners. Mm-hmm. Your sisters growing up, where in the mix were you in that?
I was the middle child.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So smack dab in the middle of 5.
Yeah, 2 older, 2 younger. I like to think of it as well-rounded.
That's good. So you guys, was there a sharing element? Obviously, the 3 of you in the room.
Yeah.
There had to be a lot of sharing.
For sure. Yeah, and one bathroom.
For all 5 of you?
Yeah, and in the beginning, my parents, were getting their start too. This fascinates me a lot, but we had a very small home, pretty tightly packed, and my parents are grinding it out, trying to be entrepreneurs, and it was around my middle school, high school, freshman year that they really took off, and then we built onto the house, and now it's huge. Everybody can have their own room and stuff, but so yeah, that's part of the story, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I saw that with my parents as well. I was like, Chad, who's really good friends with my brother, we were sitting there talking about our experiences growing up in one of the workshops that we were having here to get to know each other better. And Jordan's 7 years younger than me. We had very different childhoods growing up.
Yeah.
It's I watched my parents go from low income, single story house, very, very small, actually from an apartment when I was smaller or younger. And then it progressed as they continued to have more success, whereas Jordan really only remembered the middle of it and then up.
Yeah.
Right? So it was an interesting dichotomy as where you are in the family and experience.
Yeah. The old pecking order.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's some stories of me picking on him as well that he could bring up, but we'll leave that for a different day.
Sure.
So what about with your sisters? Did you learn some negotiation tactics that you use in business today? Kind of fighting for attention stuff?
Yeah,
resources?
I think so. I mean, like, I think that's what, like, I watch my kids right now, and they're like negotiating over Halloween candy. They like come home from the store and like sell each other their toys. I'm like, this is amazing. And like, even when they argue, like, I try to stay out of it. And like, even with my husband, he's like, I can't take the bickering. I'm like, no, like, listen, because that is how they're turning into amazing communicators. Like, you just don't wake up one day and be like, I'm a great communicator. Like, you got to go through all that stuff. And so I really do think like having the 4 sisters, like watching a lot, learning a lot. And then of course you're learning how to share, negotiate. And I think one of the greatest lessons like my sisters have taught me, even today, like even throughout this crazy year, is that we can have completely different opinions, but we can still have great love for each other too. And that's not always super clear, especially with siblings. But I think if you take a step back, that is like one of the greatest life lessons that this last year taught me.
Right.
So.
Oh, that's such a good point, because you think about is like, what are the love languages of people? Have you read that book?
Oh, yeah. And they have it for kids, too.
Right? So, like, your sisters probably have different love languages than you. And those are the gifts that you bring to the table and understand, okay, well, I can appreciate why she's coming from this angle because this is her core need versus this is my core need. And you can empathize with that. So that's really cool. I agree. Sure. It's interesting raising. So you have 2 girls, 2 boys. I got 3 girls and a boy. And it's interesting to see the dichotomy there of how they grow up and how they're managing their relationships with each other. In the youngest girl, so she is in the middle, but youngest girl sometimes getting left out and seeing how she operates her feelings when her 2 older sisters are leaving her out. Yeah. So. Yeah. Do the girls now, so your 2 girls are older than your boys, do they team up on the boys?
No, usually not. Actually, like the oldest, she's like the mama bear. She's always in charge of the twins. And then the middle one, Miley, is always doing her own thing. Like always doing her own thing. We actually have to like kind of coerce her to be like, come on, we're going as a family. But it is cool. Like she is independent and amazing, like in her own way,
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely there in the pecking order somewhere.
That's awesome. So coming into being a business owner, you did grow up with a father or mother being in business together. Now you and your husband are in business together. But what specific things do you remember about your father being that business owner while farming also? What lessons did you carry into business ownership yourself today?
Sure. I think the number one is like strength. Like I actually have it on my gratitude board. It says strength of my parents. And when I say that, it means like they never got scared. Like they were willing to take big risks. And no matter what happened, they stayed strong through the decisions that they made. So like I watched them take out giant business loans to make the big next investment in properties and rentals and stuff. And I saw them go through a couple different recessions, and I saw them stick to it. No matter what, they were going to get through it. I guess it's stick-to-itiveness, grit. And I guess that's like truly like the best thing that I could ever have taken from my parents. That and my father, I feel like he really impacted my ability to have confidence. He taught me how to drive a Bobcat when I was 9, a backhoe when I was 11. And when I was 16, he's like, here's your truck and trailer. Don't break my lawnmower. And I was, mowing yards all over the place, 16, with a giant trailer so I could reverse it, all that kind of stuff. And that grows your confidence. So I got a definite, gift of confidence from my dad.
Now, you said they weren't scared. Do you think they weren't scared, or they just acted in like light of their fear, like with courage?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's an interesting point. Like they probably were scared, but as a child, I think you don't like even know what that scared of feeling of risk would feel like.
Yeah. Our emotional intelligence as a child versus what it is today is just vastly different. So you probably didn't necessarily see it, but I think about some of the big risks that I've taken, or probably some of the risks you've taken with taking that orange shoe over from the holding group, like you said. Like, it's a big risk. It's just acting in light of your fear and betting on yourself, right?
Yeah. getting uncomfortable and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And again and again and again.
And again and again. Any other major mentors that you had in your life that played a role in your development?
Just in general, I think I've had a ton. I think when I started teaching at Orange Shoe, I had a lot of subtle mentors, like just hanging out with like amazing, successful, good people. But one specifically, like if I go way back to high school, I did have a Phi Ed coach, Mr. D, Coach Dale Downey, and he taught me that you have to want it, like that inside motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic. And I think I spent most of my life thinking other people were supposed to motivate me. But at that time, he had this great tough love, and he got people to want it. Like he really pulled that in, that self like desire to be better than you even thought you could. Mm-hmm. And I think that influenced me as a teacher, a leader. And I feel like I've spent my whole life doing the same thing in different realms. Like, hey, you're too scared to be a business owner, but I believe in you. I think you could, and like watching other people achieve things that they didn't even believe they could is just a true gift. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that was the first time I saw it in high school with him.
It's amazing you remember the good ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. And I had lots of good ones. I mean, I feel like super blessed to have grown up in a small town, and I felt 100% safe, very deep, humble roots, and, like good roots lead to great things. So
yeah. It was interesting. Chad told me in your guys' pre-show conversation that you hate the term female empowerment.
Yeah, well, hate's a strong word.
Tell me more about that.
But I feel like it's interesting, like men don't walk around and say, I'm going to my male empowerment meeting, or like, I mean, like that's just silliness.
I can't say that I've been to one.
So I guess, so I am a part of women's groups, but I'm also like very mindful of like, hey, if you think it's a lot harder to be a woman in business, for surely you will be right.
So like it's a manifestation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've worn that chip before. Like I spent a few years where I was like, they're only doing that because I'm a woman. And sure, there's situations like that, totally. But I think that if you're not real careful, that sits here and it can be a huge distraction. So I feel like, I mean, I have room to grow for sure, but I feel like I have acknowledged those sensations or emotions that come up, and I'm able to push them aside and go for what I want. I think Chad actually had said, like, he's heard that from people that, like, if you have those goals and those visions that are super clear, all these other little distractions are definitely going to get in the way, and they're going to feel like big deals. But if you keep your eye on the goal, then the other stuff, So, but in a nutshell.
No, it's really good. I think that was a very political response as well. So, and I tend to agree with you as well, but I have to be careful as a man saying that, right? It's
for sure, you walk the line, yeah.
I have to walk that line, and I'm raising 3 girls, and all I want to do is instill confidence and self-worth in them so that they can grow up and be whatever they want to be and not look for outside vindication or worth or confidence. And that comes from within.
It's funny you say that. I saw my father this morning, and we were talking about feminism, and it's a lot of times like people are like, whoa, I've been accused of being a feminist before. I'm like, hey, look at the definition, because I've never met a father of a woman who's not a feminist.
Right. Because
feminist just means, simply put, you believe that women and men should be treated equally. Mm-hmm. And I think most people, do toe that line. And so it's just like softening the word, because it sounds harsh, but it is great. And so my dad makes fun of me that I'm a feminist. And I'm like, well, I was taught by the best, because you were the biggest feminist I've ever met in my life. And he's like, no.
With 5 daughters, you have to be.
Yeah. Well, you don't set out thinking that way. But he did. He showed me how to fight when things weren't fair or equal. And really, there is no such thing as fair or equal to me, because it's in the eye of the beholder. But you can certainly try, right? So... What
your dad did was empower you to learn, empower you to have confidence, it sounds like. We just had Pete Hardesty on, who wrote the book Adulting 101, and there's 2 parts to it now, and we're going to have him on again to talk about mental health. But what he talked about, or used the phrase that I hadn't heard before, which was snowplow parents.
Oh, no, I haven't heard it.
All right, so check this out. So your dad's the exact opposite of this. Your dad has, raised you properly to be able to act for yourself, to think for yourself, to do these things. So snowplow parents plow all obstacles out of the way for their children.
Oh, sure.
Therefore, not empowering them, not really raising them for the real world. Mm-hmm. And I had never heard that term before you brought it up either, but it makes so much sense how you see probably some of your friends with their kids, or you've certainly seen them through sports with kids and otherwise, where they're not allowing their kids to experience challenges, but rather plowing those challenges out of the way, or paving the road for the kid instead of letting the kid really grow up.
Yeah. No, that's no good. You got to have lots of adversity and challenges before you make your character. So...
Actually, interesting you brought that up. I asked my new advisor class this, and only a couple of them were able to answer it. Can you think of the worst day you've had in your life?
Oh, I could give you like 10.
Okay. So I only had 2 of them raise their hand when I asked that question.
Oh, really?
Which all that means is they really haven't experienced that much adversity, so they should feel really blessed in their life thus far. But if you can't identify the worst day of your life, or 10 of them, like you said, I would challenge you probably haven't gone through a lot.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, too, like up to like age like 25, 26, like your hardest adversities are like, we got our butts kicked in a game or whatever. But like the more tread you have on your tires, the more chances you have for adversity. And the more you put yourself out there, the more adversities you're going to overcome too. So,
well, it depends on your upbringing as well. Like I think there's certainly kids that either they didn't grow up without a parent, or a parent died early, or they lost a sibling due to cancer or something. Like there's certainly like travesties type stuff that'll destroy innocence early. But I think for by and large, a lot of us do grow up blessed and haven't had to experience much. So I personally look for hiring people that do or have had to go through adversity, because being a business owner, as bringing on franchise owner, it's tough work.
Yeah.
And they're going to go through a lot of trials and tribulations to become a successful business owner.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a pandemic.
Yeah. Who knew?
So, right, exactly. So the last 18 months has been extremely difficult for all business owners. We're sitting about a year and a month since like it first broke.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts going on in your head, like right when it first happened, right when you found out this pandemic's happening, we're having to like go on lockdown? What was going through your head?
Well, first was we were going to do business as usual as long as we could, and we did. And then when it came to the point where the decision was made to, classify essential and non-essential businesses, that was when we really moved and shaked. So it was 2 weeks of like, what are we going to do? Kind of scrambling a little bit. We did a lot of like Facebook Lives, in the first 2 weeks of the shutdown, trying to get our footing. But we were floundering for about 2 weeks. And then I felt like we put our foot down, and we devoted all of our time and all of our attention to doing virtuals. So we chose Zoom as our platform. And so we tried to make it as business as usual. So if you had a 9 a.m. in-house, we're doing a 9 a.m. in your house, but via Zoom. And that was our godsend. Like our true savior is the relationships we had with our clients. And they were willing to pay the same price for the virtual option. And they hung in there with us through the whole shutdown. I mean, obviously we suffered losses for sure, but we were really able to manage the loss. So I guess at first it was a little bit of just like floundering sensation. I did have, I'm very honest, stages of very anger. I was super upset when decisions were being made that I thought were unfair. The small guys were being treated, to me, it felt like the same as the big guys. So whether you had 30,000 members or you had 200, you were treated the same. You were just shut down. And so that was, infuriating to me. I've actually shared that with higher up government officials. I was very active with the chamber and sharing, this is not equitable. This is not inclusive. And that's what I feel like everyone's always preaching, but that was not happening. So that's a lot of anger came out. I remember visiting my mother-in-law one day, and she's like, Katie, you're not yourself. And I'm like, if your kids get shut out of school and your businesses get closed down, I bet you wouldn't. She was great. She was amazing. But I think like that was like my first, like, okay, my anger's probably taking over.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was amazing to just kind of gently say, you're not quite yourself. But yeah, so that was all there. And, thank God, like, we've been through a lot of different stuff. So it's like, okay, we made it through, a flood in our business. We made it through X, Y, and Z. And so then a lot of that helped us. Like, we got through all that stuff. We're going to get through this too. So
yeah. And that's actually the point too, is when you think about your worst days or your 10 worst days, you're undefeated in getting through them. All of us are.
Yeah.
We're still standing.
So
it's one of those things where you just continue to forge forward. Is like, hey, I've gotten through my worst days. I can get through today too.
Yeah, that's good.
So you fast forward through the pandemic. Zoom was a lifesaver. It was for us as well as the other platforms: GoToMeeting, Teams, Ring Central, powered by Zoom. Seems like everything is. But I learned like 4 platforms really quickly.
Yeah.
To be able to adapt and adapt to other people's preferences and whatever it might be. What else did you guys have to adapt during that time frame?
So we had a lot of different marketing, strategies, tactics. We honed in some social media stuff. For me personally, I had to just play with like different audio systems, because while you're like upside down or moving, like there's not always like a perfect solution. But I had some clients that were relentless, that they wanted to hear me better, and they helped me get better. But overall, I think what was really great is we got more cohesive actually. And we did more strategic meetings. So we were meeting with our owners way more, but on Zoom. And so I think as a whole unit of owners, we actually got closer together. That's crazy, right?
Yeah, it is.
But you could see
I can see like the fact that you guys, you're coming together in a common interest and a common pain. Mm-hmm. Right? There's uncertainty there that you guys could rally around. Yep. And I think that's important to note for all business owners at any given time, whether hopefully you don't need a pandemic to create that common bond, right? It's like that definitely created one for you, for us, for many people, but it's like, what's the rallying cry going forward then? Yeah. Like what can we bond around? What can we rally around a mission behind? Like, for instance, like I think about necessity and you guys getting shut down, the gyms getting shut down, like in general, like realize that 78% of people hospitalized were obese. Yeah. Like, so we're going to shut down, we're going to say the gyms aren't essential?
Yeah, the irony. So like for me, it like ripped my soul out when I found out that the gyms had to close, but the liquor stores could stay open. I'm like, what are we teaching? Like our future generations, and that was a part of like my anger, because I really believe like every human that has ever come to an Orange Shoe, like we touch and we like help them be better versions, not just physically, but like their attitudes, their energy, and it's like they're different humans when they feel great in their bodies. And so I think this last year has been extra hard to see, because I think there has been even a worse decline in health from people sitting around more, drinking more, eating more. And that makes my soul like sad. It really does. So I guess like with people who are inspiring, we can keep sharing our stories and keep working on like helping people find their why, because they have to find it inside themselves. And as soon as people want it, they can make that change. And that's what I want for everybody.
And there's so much science behind the endorphins created through exercise and your brain health. Yes. Right. So it's like, let's follow that science and continue to push that narrative. Yeah. But I really resonate with your comments on, you guys touching them in much more than like a physical sense. I've had a couple advisors of mine lose massive amount of weight, and they had their best years ever at the same time. Yeah. So they made it a focus to their health, their weight, whatever it might be, but it also created this mental shift for them to have their best year ever in business. Yeah. So you can have both. And it's interesting as well, I've heard or read statistics about people that do Ironman. Mm-hmm. It's like some of the average income of the average Ironman athlete is like 4 times the median income.
I haven't heard that one. I believe it.
because they're like busy people find a way. And my dad always told me this as well, is that you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Yeah.
Because they will build it in, they will figure out how and where to get it done.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
So there's something to it. And I just want to encourage everyone out there is like, hey, if you haven't taken your health seriously in the last year, or maybe you were before the pandemic and now you need to get back on track. And I definitely, right after it hit, I will admit that I was probably in my worst spot physically because I had done a really good job up until that point. Mm-hmm. And then, dude, you're at home and you couldn't go to the gym. Yeah. And that was my routine. And I have a nice weight room in my house. I'm blessed. Mm-hmm. And I didn't touch them.
Yeah.
I didn't touch them. I sat there.
Yeah, there was a lot going on at that time. Yeah, that was tough. That the first 6-8 weeks, I've talked to so many people. That was really tough on a lot of people.
But I was lucky enough to be in a great study group, and they called me out and they said, "You're not the same. Yeah. What's different?"
Yeah.
And we deduced it to I hadn't been working out regularly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. I've called a few people out myself in my lifetime, and it's interesting how you accepted it, but some people might not talk to you for a very long time after that. But I've had people call me out in my life too, and I think both. Like sometimes I'm like receiving it, and then other times I'm like, no, you didn't.
Well, it depends on probably relationship.
Yeah.
Right, because sure. I've always been taught that. Accountability without a relationship is nothing more than harassment.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a good enough relationship or a relationship in that way, perhaps they saw it as harassment or you received it as harassment.
Yeah.
But if you do, then maybe it's just their stage right then and there, their mental stage, like they weren't ready to receive that. It's interesting.
For sure.
But I will say for sure that I was drinking too much. I was at home. I couldn't shut it off, right? I was on the computer all day, and I wouldn't get off the computer because I'm getting through emails or more Zoom calls or trying to settle down someone else's mental anguish.
Yeah.
And there was a good 2-3 months that I stopped working out. And I was not the same.
Yeah. It's a part of your chemistry, your happiness. I was blessed to teach a bunch of police officers this last month, and through the fitness and yoga, like I'm like, listen, this is not about fitness and yoga. I'm like, this is about happy chemicals. And so then I'm like, you get oxytocin and endorphins, you get serotonin, and there's 5 happy chemicals that your body actually produces when you exercise or move. And it actually starts happening after 2 minutes. So like, even if I can coerce someone who's feeling horrible to get up and just move for 2 minutes, you already start to get those little doses of happiness. And if like even culturally, like in the office or at home, I'm being very mindful of like not sitting like longer than an hour before I'm up and doing something, because it is a big deal. It's very important.
Like, all right, 20 burpees, let's go.
Yeah, I know. A lot of times, like I'll be in meetings and I'll just like throw the chair back and I start stretching a leg. But the nice thing is you do that, people get like used to it. And then all of a sudden it's like culturally accepted. And I'm like, how cool is that? We have a culture where you can stretch and move in a meeting.
You just gave me a great idea. I'm going to pause any hour-long meeting for everyone to do jumping jacks and burpees.
Well, only if they wear the right bra, though. You gotta, you better watch that one.
That's a great point. You got to be cognizant of the room, right? Yep. That's a good point. So, but I do like the idea of like, hey, we've just been sitting here for 45 minutes. Let's get up and move. For
sure. You'll think better. You'll work better. It's just like meditation, the miracle morning. My husband's big into that. He's like, I'm a different person when I have, 10 minutes of quiet in the morning. So.
Well, with kids in the house, as you guys know, if you get up before they do, that's the only quiet you're going to see that day.
It is. It truly is. Yeah.
So that's the only time I read is in the morning because I'm too ADD. Any other noises are going to distract me. So it's like perfectly still.
Yeah.
The dogs aren't doing anything. They're still sleeping. The kids are still sleeping. I was like, so I don't work out in the morning. I read and I'll work out later in the day.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. You got to figure out what works for you.
Yep.
Since my husband's always up super duper early, I actually had to start leaving the house crazy early just so I could get my alone time. I'm like, well, you're hogging the living room. I'm out of here. So it was a fun routine during like some of the shutdowns. Since we own gyms, it was easy to go by myself also and just like that was my alone time, and I cherish it. It was fantastic.
No, that's good. So we're kind of circling mindset. So let's dive in a little bit deeper there. How do you look at these topics? Country divided, bad or good thing?
Yeah, good question, right? So I think it's all about the story that you want to tell. If you think that the country's divided and, 50% are here and 50% are there, and you think that's horrible, well, then that's your opinion, but that's not a fact. Like, I actually think it's amazing that the United States of America has these opinions that are on both sides. I actually would be a lot more scared if we had 70% over here and 30 over here. Either side, I don't think that would be a good swing, right, honestly. And I really truly believe that there are amazing people on both sides of the divide, and I think there's some pretty awful people on both sides of the divide, equally distributed.
Yeah. And we focus only on the bad, or at least the media does, which forces our mindset to go down that path as well.
Yeah. I think, though, the more that we talk about flip it and reverse it, like anything you say, you can flip it and reverse it to a positive spin. You really can. And I think the more people that talk about that, it's very empowering.
I couldn't agree more. So totally different, but on the mindset side, goals.
Yeah.
Goals. So how big should they be and why?
I think you should dream as big as you possibly can. Every time my husband and I have set like a big goal, it really does seem to come even quicker than you thought you could. But it's so weird how like you have a hard time like writing it down or even thinking about it. But during COVID shutdown, one night I was on a Zoom call with the broads, the women's group, Joanna heads up. And everybody on the call was, talking. And I think at that time, I wasn't ready to talk yet. I'm like, I just can't. I can't even express what I'm feeling, because this was like during the shutdown. So I literally lined our whole bedroom with the big Post-it boards, the sticky ones. They're still on. And I just started purging, like the best case scenario, what could happen this year. And I was writing down stuff that I truly didn't even believe I could do. And it wasn't even like 3 months later that I'm like, no way. Like, I'm so grateful that I wrote that stuff on the wall, but it was just that instance. It actually was like out of like, I had no control over anything at that time. The only thing I had control over was what I could conjure up, and that's when I started my gratitude board, and we just kept writing down things. And some days it was like, I'm so grateful my family is healthy. I'm so grateful I have food for my family. I'm so grateful I have a home for my family. And then that gratitude slowly started to go into like, someday, I'm going to buy that beach house, and just writing it down and believing. Sometimes it's longer or quicker than others, but.
So that's so powerful. What if I want to go into like, what's step one? Like if someone's feeling utterly out of control of their life right now, what do they need to do for first step in your mind?
Get out a piece of paper and a pen, even if you just got to sit there. And if nothing comes out right then at that time, like try it again later. Like it'll come. And sometimes you need it to just be the right time. Maybe you need that quiet time in the morning. Maybe you need a week of quiet time in the morning before you are able to inspire yourself. But honestly, though, if you're not getting any goals for yourself, I would dig deep and figure out who you can hang out with that also is writing big goals. Chad and I actually talked about that earlier, and I thought more about it since he asked me that question. If like your association is huge and powerful, but if you don't have access to that, actually, I believe this is the 21st century, and it is the greatest time ever on the face of the planet to up your association. You can do that by finding great groups online with social media, being mindful of what you're watching and putting in your brain, because it's not always like a physical association that you have to be hanging out with people that are amazing. You have to really watch what you're putting in your head and the people that you're associating with online, social media, the news. I haven't watched the news in 12 months. I haven't turned the TV on. I think like during COVID, I'm like, nope, never again. So if I'm going to get any news, it's going to be from friends, family, or I'll go look it up on my phone if I got to.
If someone says something, I want to do
this. Yeah, but like, so that's where I'm at, like, because I'm guarding my association. So, and I'm really grateful. I feel like the chamber is a huge impactor, and in Business Magazine, John Konarski, like just conversations with that, like people who are inspiring and uplifting. And I know that they're not all the time, but when they're all in public, they are.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. Like, you know.
Or when they're with you, they are.
Yeah.
And that's what's important, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking about that and thinking about the steps, I want to go back to that piece of paper and pen, because sometimes people are like, well, what do I write down? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes it's good to purge those negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I like to think of if there's been times where I can write down all my negative thoughts and just purge it.
Yeah.
Here they are all on paper.
Have you ever burned it?
I haven't.
I was at one leadership training and they're like, okay, it was like fall, and fall is like a great reset time. Yeah. So they had us write it all down. And in the studio, they passed around a lighter and everybody burned their piece of paper and then like stomped on it. Yeah.
Well, that's probably a good exercise. What I'm just thinking though as well, or just even simply that I've done, is read those statements after I wrote them and then ask, is that true?
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Right? And then what you can do is write the opposite of that, like you mentioned. Like maybe do a T-chart, and on the opposite side, write an opposite thought and say, could that be just as true?
Yeah, reverse it, yeah.
Right?
That's good.
So you get into some Byron Katie and Brene Brown stuff with the work there, and really you dive down to is like if you can operate in both spaces and say, could that be just as true? And write all the reasons down that it could be, you can really flip your mindset. Or just burn the shit and just get it over with. That might be quicker, but it really depends on your state.
I'm an A to B kind of gal. That works, yeah.
So that's fun. Do you think that a positive mindset can be taught? Or is it just something that you're raised with or born with?
I do think like some people are more naturally inclined to be optimists. I have been told more than once that I'm blindly optimist, which, you know, I have to watch that because I know like I'm like a big believer, like huge believer, like, you know, and people are like, well, that might be a little over optimist. So I'm definitely born a little bit more that way. Whereas I've had like some clients who are more like Eeyore-ish. I believe they're born a little more Eeyore-ish, and they have to dig for it. They have to work harder for it. But if you look at like everybody's strengths and weaknesses, everybody's got some. Mm-hmm. So if my strength is optimism, I'm gonna use it like I got it, right? And if Eeyore's strength is not optimist, he's just gonna have to work for that a little harder, you know?
Yeah.
When other things don't come naturally to me, like numbers, I have to work super hard to make sure I understand my accounting and numbers of things. It does not come natural to me at all. So I have to dig for that, you know, so it's...
Is it Scott that tells you you're too blindly optimistic?
No, actually my Harrison.
Your Harrison tells you that?
Yeah,
It's a great, that's a great tool. She's talking about the Harrison assessment, and for anyone that hasn't used that, we use it for coaching with our advisors and our leaders. It is a great tool.
Yeah. Well, and then sometimes when you retake it, like, can't you like retake it like every 3 years? And it actually blows my mind how my husband and I's have changed over the years. So.
Well, it should. That means you're growing, right?
Yeah. Yep. And then as a partnership, you have to maneuver how you're going to change and grow and adapt to each other, changing and growing.
So how often do you guys fight?
It goes in spurts. And I wouldn't call it fighting.
Oh, let's say argue.
It's negotiations.
Yeah, okay, fine. Negotiations. How often do you guys negotiate with each other?
I mean, daily. Like, we're constantly negotiating, like, who's doing what, who's where, when, all that stuff. But when we're communicating well, it feels amazing. And when we have tough spots, it's because we're not communicating. You know what I'm saying?
So how do you so if you've identified that, how do you stay communicating well?
I think it's natural to go in streaks. And so I think when you start to feel like the tension or the strain on the relationship in general, whether it's business, you have to like sit back and like try to work through it. And there's times that like we're working too much together and we're like, whoa, way too much time. And we have to like, you have to feel it, you get uncomfortable, identify it, and then you make changes so you can get back to where you're both feeling good again. Actually, when we got married, we had a business partner who gave us, I don't know, it's like this art piece. And it fits very nicely together. It's 2 vases that snug up. And then the 2 vases are actually very beautiful independently. You can't even tell they're meant to snug up. Mm-hmm. And then his like advice to us is very meaningful. He just said, hey, there's going to be times in life where you snuggle those up because that's where you need to be in that particular situation. But be mindful of that can't always, sometimes it has to be here. Sometimes
you're beautiful apart as well.
Yeah. And so like definitely we ebb and flow like that. So, and we take turns on everything.
Oh, that's awesome. I always admire couples that are in business together. It's like my wife was actually an intern for Northwestern Mutual way back in the day, and that's how we met. She was in a different office, and we met at a conference, and she decided to pursue a different path. And you and I talked before. We had owned Anytime Fitness downtown, and she ran that. And so it was one of those interesting pieces. Like, I know that I could never work with her, not because of her, and she's brilliant, because of me.
Yeah.
Like, I would smash boundaries and carry that. So I admire couples that are able to work through that and be able to work through home life and business life and keep boundaries and keep a happy marriage, because that's, at the end of the day, what your kids need and what you guys need first and foremost over the business.
For sure.
So did you learn anything from your parents or see anything from your parents, good, bad, and different, as they were in business together?
Well, of course, yeah. Oh gosh, if I could pinpoint it. I guess like the thing that I'm most grateful for is like definitely seeing their strength and cohesiveness. So I am so grateful that both my parents and my husband's parents have had very lengthy, long marriages, and most of the time they seem super happy.
Most of the time,
everybody's got their like highs and lows, but my parents right now are traveling happiness. Like, they travel all the time. They're having so much fun, and so that's fun to look forward to, and I want to emulate that. So, and Scott's parents are like, what I've learned from them is like how to be like empathetic, nice, and calming and loving, and that's what I've learned from his family. My family is like way more like, they taught me how to be like loud, aggressive, assertive, make sure that nobody tells you what you can and cannot do, because only you can tell yourself that. That's what I got from my parents. For sure.
You know what I can find interesting with just you listing off those like family values? Do you guys have your own Michael's family values that you keep for the kids?
If somebody said to me, what are my values? And I don't know if the kids know this for sure, but I do constantly check in, and I have it in the bedroom. It's faith, family, finances. And I definitely, sometimes I'll get on a project where I'm like, holy cow, this is all about the money, right? Or like success, or like, I'm like working on a build out in Chicago, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I'm putting my goals, dreams, and desires before everything else right now. And then I call it deplating. So like, I'm like, crap, my plate got super duper full. I'm going to spend the next 3 months deplating. And then I'm usually good for a while. And then the plate, it gets full again and just like creeps in. And then you got to deplate it again. But then I am constantly faith, family, finances in my head, making sure I'm keeping it in that order, because if it gets out of whack, it doesn't feel good for me. It doesn't feel good for my business partners, anybody. So
how do you feel about the term work-life balance?
Yeah, well, I think there's no such thing.
Me too.
But I do think for me, I have to have a steady stream of time with the family, and a balance of inside of me always have a burning desire to do more. And I do think I was born that way. Like my whole life, I prefer it if I never sit down once throughout the day. I love to go. And so that's when I run into the whole like, oh my gosh, I got too much on my plate. Now I got to take it off. So I just currently ran for school board and was elected. And I also run.
Well, congrats.
Thanks. I'm very excited. Yep. So I'm right now loading the plate. So I will have to make sure I keep it balanced throughout the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So
that's exciting. And I agree, there's no such thing as work-life balance, because people automatically associate in their minds that it's 50-50 when they think of balance, and there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Because every day, if not every week, is going to be a mix more of work or a mix more of kids or whatever it may be, depending on what's demanding your time that day.
Yeah.
And we can always get into this guilt spiral
for sure.
Of I didn't spend enough time here, now I'm over here. I didn't spend enough time at work, so now I got to make up, and I'm taking away time from the kids.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious cycle that we can end up in, and what we got to focus on is the quality of time we spend with our kids.
Yeah.
Because even if you were just perfect about things and worked a 9 to 5 and you just work those hours, well, you still got to sleep. So let's say that's 6 to 8 hours of 24 hours. Then you work 8 to 9 hours.
Yeah.
Also, your kids are in school, so you're not going to see them during that time anyhow. Like, you really only have a few hours a day to be with your kids anyhow. So if we're equating balance, it's never going to be the exact same.
For sure.
So what do you think Scott's going to say about the work-life balance?
I think I would guess he would say it's like cyclical. You know, it's like you get in a cycle, things do feel balanced, and then all of a sudden you're like out of whack, so you have to get back in balance. You're in balance for a while, and we're okay with that. You know, as you know, what I see is like some people aren't okay with that. Like they think that it's supposed to be like this all the time.
Yeah.
Well, I don't expect it. I don't think Scott does either. But we communicate, like when it gets way out of whack, like I can nag him to death until he's like, okay, yeah, now I got to pull back, or whatever it may be. Vice versa. It'll be fun with these new board positions, how long it's going to be before he's like, so Katie, you've been gone quite a bit. But
Which school district?
we're out in Deerfield. It's
Oh, so you're still in Deerfield. Okay,
yeah, yep. So actually we lived in Madison for 10 full years. And then I decided I wanted to build a house in the country. We decided, but
Quick correction.
yeah, we decided. But yeah, so we're back to small town.
That's good. I decided. I mean, we.
Yes.
So that's good. My wife grew up in the country, and it's interesting because now I grew up pretty much suburbs my whole life, and I'm like, I wouldn't mind some land, and she's like, I kind of like the neighborhood. Like, so it's interesting how that's reversed.
Yeah.
But we'll see over the next few years what we decide, or she decides.
Yeah.
But either way, so happy spouse, happy life. It doesn't just have to be wife.
Yeah, that's jingly. That's like
right?
rhyming.
So before we wrap into the word game, because I know we got a hard cutoff coming up here, what do you think has been some of the key characteristics? Let's brag on Scott for a little bit, and then we'll go back to you. What do you think some of the key characteristics Scott has exhibited to help you guys become as successful as quickly as you have? And then same question for you.
Yeah. Scott's true strength is like caring and loving relationships. He's like the best relationship builder I have ever seen in my life. That, and he is like seriously like steadfast tin soldier, like no matter what happens, he is like just smooth and steady. Like that actually like blows my mind. But then like when I hang out with his parents, then I'm like, oh, like his parents are loving and kind, and doesn't matter what happens, smooth and steady. So I think that's like his two major strengths right there.
Well, those are awesome strengths for a leader. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't tell you, for most business owners, I don't think enough attention gets paid to energy, right? And meaning that, like, as the business leader, either you, him, or anyone else that's listening that's a business leader, you control the energy of your organization.
Yep.
And so if you seem stressed, whether it's money or the pandemic or otherwise, your people will emulate that energy.
For sure.
And if like Scott is calm, cool, and collected, that's how they're going to emulate that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does an amazing job at that. Amazing.
So I think one of the key things for any business owner is to make sure each day, whether it's the miracle morning like Scott does, or you just have a morning routine that feels good to you, whatever gets you in your best energy that day, even when you're not feeling your best, you got to do it.
Yeah.
So love that. All right. What have been your best characteristics? Don't worry. I'm going to ask Scott this too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, what would Scott say?
No, I'll ask him what he's going to say. You got to say what you want to say.
I think some of my strengths are networking, social, like being a part of groups, definitely passionate about helping people. So I definitely say I'm positively aggressive. I am in charge of like our negotiations and our strategic placement of locations, real estate. So my mind works very good that way to start a project and make sure it goes from A to be. Like, and if anything's in the way, that's too bad. It's happening anyway. So
good. I love it. I would say, no, you don't have to use aggressive. Say assertive.
Yeah, I like aggressive.
Some people don't. Yeah. It's like the word moist for some reason. People don't like it. There, everyone that's listening, if you don't like moist, sorry.
I just think of Betty Crocker, like cupcakes and brownies. We're good to go.
You want a moist cake. Yep. Come on, people. It's not that scary of a word.
Yep.
All right, speaking of words, let's do the word game quick. For anyone that hasn't listened to the podcast before, the word game is simply this. I say a word, and Katie's going to give me the first word that comes to mind for her, or maybe a short phrase. The only rule is she can't repeat herself. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Action.
Now.
Love.
Kind.
Fitness.
Looking good.
Life.
Happy.
Death.
Mysterious.
Energy.
Positive.
Failure.
Tough.
Success.
Awesome.
Inspire.
Love it.
Impact.
I want lots of it.
Good job. You were all scared about the word game. All like
I wasn't
uncertain.
sure how it was going to work.
No, you got it. You nailed it. So I try to, it's interesting is I love, your answers. I love most people's answers because it's just bringing out more of them, that quick hit thing. But so I try not to do too many affirmations or not during. I'm just trying to be like your husband and stoic and all that. But no, it's really good. All right. So last couple of quick hitters. What is your favorite book of all time? Or you could take it a different direction as the one you most recently read that you want to give a shout out to.
Yeah. The two that popped to mind right now is Grit. I read that.
Angela Duckworth?
Yeah. It's a tough read, but I made myself read every sentence and it really resounded with me. I thought it was an amazing book. And then the other one is by Sheryl Sandberg, Lean In.
Yeah.
That's that one. I read it at just the right time and it was really profound for me. So those are my two favorite off the top of my head.
Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
I would agree. Angela Duckworth's book is, she's a researcher by trade and professor. I've heard her speak before. She does a pretty good job. She's not going to inspire you off your seat to jump and go do it now. Mm-hmm. But her knowledge and her, the research that she does, and she is still a good communicator, don't get me wrong. So I would agree. That's a great book. Lean In, I have actually not read yet.
Yeah, it's a good one. It basically, the whole theme is are you just a tiny bit uncomfortable? Just lean in a tiny bit and you'll be shocked at how comfortable that you can be. And that's really the preface of the whole book. And she just kind of, gives examples of stuff. And the psychology behind that is really profound. And it's a good one. Yeah, if you haven't read it. It's older. I want to say it came out
Yeah, I've definitely heard of it. I just haven't had that hasn't been at the top. It hasn't surfaced to the top of my list with all the books that
it is more of a woman empowerment book, so.
I know how you feel about that term, so. All right, favorite podcast that you listen to regularly?
Oh, I don't listen to one regularly, but I should start listening to yours regularly. I did look at a couple before I came in. Good. But when I have
I don't mandate it, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's not a mandate. No. It'd be good for me though, I think. So.
Well, I just do it anytime I'm driving any way, or if I'm out on the lawn, doing random things, I have a podcast on.
Yeah. Oh, I love
and
it.
Just trying to feed the brain with good stuff versus turning on the news, right?
Yep, exactly.
And how can the audience follow you, get in touch with you? Maybe they want to start another franchise with you. How can they do that?
Yeah, several different ways, but the easiest way is to go to orangeshoe.com. You can see all of our inquiry forms there. But otherwise, you can go to Katie Michel on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So any of those realms.
Well, this has been a lot of fun to get to know you better.
Yeah, thanks. Likewise.
And we get the audience to get a bunch of nuggets from you.
I hope so.
Well, they will. This has been a great conversation. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with Scott next week.
Yep.
You nervous?
No. No,
you guys are great.
He's more of the sit back, calm, wisdom. He's going to drop some knowledge on you guys. I'm more of the
It's all good. I love getting different personalities on here because it takes all kinds, and the people that are listening are going to take something different away from every different personality. So that's what's fun about doing this. But you got to go teach wine and yoga class.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I asked her before, by the way. She doesn't actually drink wine during the yoga. They do yoga first. I was really confused. I was thinking, how am I going to drink wine and do a downward facing dog? That just seems complicated.
A straw. You could do it with a straw.
Yes.
You could.
Solutions. All right, everybody. We will end it there. Katie's got to run, but I appreciate everyone tuning in. And as you go about your weeks, make sure you're having as much impact as possible.